For 12 years, the Morrison family searched for a rational explanation that didn't exist. Master Sergeant Kyle Morrison and 3 members of his Delta Force unit had vanished from a Mediterranean cruise ship somewhere between Cyprus and Turkey in September 2011. Not lost overboard, not victims of an accident, simply gone. 4 elite soldiers who'd survived deployments in the world's most dangerous places disappeared on a luxury vacation cruise with 3,000 witnesses aboard. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Kyle Morrison was the kind of man who planned everything 3 steps ahead. At 34, he was a senior intelligence analyst with the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, known simply as the unit to those inside the community. His service record was exemplary: 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 3 to Iraq, a Bronze Star with Valor, and the kind of security clearance that made him sign non-disclosure agreements before breakfast. He wasn't reckless, he wasn't careless, and he certainly wasn't the type to fall off a cruise ship drunk. But that's exactly what the official report concluded about all 4 men. Morrison, along with Lieutenant Colonel Derek Vaughn, Staff Sergeant Antonio "Tony" Rivera, and Sergeant First Class Benjamin Cole, had booked a 10-day Mediterranean cruise as part of an approved rest and recuperation period following a classified operation in Yemen. The cruise line was Royal Mediterranean Voyages. The ship was the MV Celestial Dream, a massive vessel carrying 2,847 passengers and 1,200 crew members on a route from Athens to Barcelona with stops in Turkey, Cyprus, and Italy. The 4 soldiers had been traveling in civilian clothes, registered under their real names but with no indication of their military affiliation. As far as anyone aboard knew, they were just 4 American friends enjoying a vacation. They'd been seen at dinner on September 18th, laughing and relaxed at a table in the Atlas dining room. Security footage showed them heading to the Constellation Lounge for drinks around 2100 hours. After that, nothing. They didn't show up for breakfast on September 19th. Their rooms, 2 adjoining cabins on Deck 8, remained locked from the inside, though housekeeping noticed the "Do Not Disturb" signs were still hanging on the doors. By noon, when the ship docked in Antalya, Turkey, concerned friends they made aboard alerted ship security. Staff used master keys to enter the cabins. All 4 beds were made, military precise, with hospital corners. Luggage was organized. Passports, wallets, and phones were locked in the room's safes. Toiletries arranged on bathroom counters. It looked like the men had stepped out for a moment and planned to return. But they never did. Ship security reviewed every camera feed. The MV Celestial Dream had one of the most sophisticated surveillance systems in the cruise industry. 847 cameras covering public areas, corridors, pool decks, and nearly every angle of the ship. The footage showed the 4 men leaving the Constellation Lounge at 22:47 hours, walking together toward an aft stairway. Then, impossibly, they simply ceased to exist on camera. No footage of them on any deck, no images of them approaching railings or entering restricted areas, no signs of struggle or distress. 4 men walked toward a stairway and were never seen again on over 800 cameras during the 8 hours before the ship docked. The cruise line immediately contacted authorities. Turkish Maritime Police boarded in Antalya and began an investigation. The U.S. Naval Criminal Investigation Service, NCIS, was notified. The ship was held in port for 3 days while investigators interviewed passengers and crew, reviewed footage, and searched every accessible area of the 350-meter vessel. They found nothing. No signs of foul play, no blood, no torn clothing, no indication anyone had gone overboard, and the ship's sophisticated man-overboard detection system hadn't registered any alarms during the night. Kyle's mother, Patricia Morrison, flew to Turkey within 48 hours of the notification. She was a retired Navy nurse, pragmatic and tough, but the conversation with the Turkish investigators left her hollow. They kept using phrases like "unusual circumstances" and "ongoing investigation," while their eyes said what their mouths wouldn't: "We have no idea what happened." 4 grown men don't just evaporate, Patricia told the lead investigator, a weary Turkish captain named Mehmet Yilmaz. This ship has cameras everywhere. How do 4 people disappear on camera? Mrs. Morrison, I have worked maritime investigations for 20 years. I have seen many disappearances at sea. They always leave evidence. A shoe, a handprint, camera footage of climbing over railings, witnesses hearing a splash, always something. He paused, choosing his words carefully. This case has none of those indicators. It is unprecedented. The official investigation dragged on for months, hampered by jurisdictional complications. The ship was registered in Malta, flagged under Liberian maritime law, operated by a Greek company, and the incident had occurred in international waters between Cyprus and Turkey. 4 American military personnel had vanished, which meant the FBI, NCIS, and military intelligence all wanted jurisdiction. Meanwhile, Turkish authorities claimed primacy because the disappearances were discovered in their port. The bureaucratic tangle meant nobody took full ownership. Reports were filed, evidence was cataloged, and eventually the case was classified under the bland bureaucratic designation, presumed lost at sea, accidental drowning. But the families knew that conclusion was impossible. Derek Vaughn's husband, Marcus, was an attorney who specialized in maritime law. He obtained the ship's complete surveillance logs and hired a private security analyst to review them. The analysis confirmed what ship security had told investigators. There was a gap. Between 22:47 hours when the men entered the stairwell and 6:30 hours when the morning shift began reviewing footage, there were 17 cameras on the ship that showed blank feeds, technical malfunctions logged as routine maintenance errors. 17 cameras failing simultaneously on the same night 4 soldiers disappeared wasn't routine. It was sabotage. Tony Rivera's sister, Carmen, was a journalist for the Miami Herald. She started investigating the MV Celestial Dream's history and discovered this wasn't the first time people had disappeared from the ship under mysterious circumstances. In 2008, a Turkish-American businessman had vanished during a similar route. In 2010, a British couple were reported missing and never found. Both cases had been closed as accidental, despite similar patterns: no witnesses, no camera footage, no evidence.
There's something wrong with that ship, Carmen told the other families during one of their regular conference calls 6 months after the disappearance. Or there's someone on that ship making people disappear. Either way, our guys weren't the first. Benjamin Cole's father, retired Army Colonel Richard Cole, used his connections to request a military investigation. He argued that 4 Delta Force operators disappearing during approved leave constituted a potential security breach. What if they'd been kidnapped? What if foreign intelligence services had targeted them? What if there was classified information at risk? The Pentagon's response was maddeningly bureaucratic. Yes, the disappearances were concerning. Yes, there were security implications. But without evidence of foul play, and given the circumstances occurred on a civilian cruise ship in international waters, military jurisdiction was questionable. The investigation would continue through appropriate civilian channels. Translation: we're not going to spend resources on this. The families formed what they called the Dream 4 Alliance, refusing to use the cruise line's marketing name without irony. They pooled resources, hired private investigators, and began their own parallel investigation that would span 12 years. They discovered inconsistencies that multiplied the more they dug. The ship's manifest showed the MV Celestial Dream had made an unscheduled stop near the Turkish coast around 0300 hours on September 19th, approximately 5 hours after the men were last seen. The reason given was minor engine maintenance. But maritime tracking data showed the ship had been stationary for only 23 minutes before resuming course. Not enough time for actual engine work, but plenty of time to transfer people to smaller vessels. 3 crew members who'd been working the night shift had resigned within a week of the incident, all returning to their home countries before investigators could conduct follow-up interviews. One was a Turkish national who'd worked in ship security. Another was a Filipino deckhand who had access to maintenance areas. The third was a Greek engineer who would have controlled the surveillance system. Passenger interviews revealed that several people had heard unusual noises around 200 to 300 hours, described as machinery sounds or metal scraping coming from lower decks. But these reports were buried in appendices of the official investigation, dismissed as normal ship operations. Most troubling, a Bulgarian crew member named Viktor Petrov, who worked in the ship's maintenance department, had contacted the U.S. Embassy in Athens 3 weeks after the incident, claiming he had information about what really happened to the Americans. He'd scheduled an interview with embassy security officers, but never showed up. 2 days later, his body was found in the Kifisia district of Athens, an apparent suicide by hanging. The Greek police closed the case quickly. Too quickly, according to a retired Greek investigator Carmen Rivera later tracked down and interviewed. Petrov was terrified, the investigator told Carmen off the record. The case file noted he'd told neighbors he was being followed, but the official ruling was depression and alcohol abuse. Convenient. The families compiled everything into a 400-page dossier they submitted to their congressional representatives, the FBI, NCIS, and the Department of Defense. They created a website, dream4.org, that documented every inconsistency and publicly challenged the official narrative. Patricia Morrison appeared on news programs. Her military bearing and articulate presentation made her impossible to dismiss as a hysterical parent. My son was a Delta Force operator. He had top secret clearance and had participated in missions I'll never know about. He and his teammates were among the most capable, aware, and survival-trained individuals in the American military. The idea that all 4 of them accidentally drowned without leaving a single piece of evidence is not just unlikely, it's statistically impossible. But statistical impossibility doesn't reopen closed cases. The years accumulated like barnacles on a hole. 2012 became 2015, 2015 became 2018. The families aged, their grief hardening into permanent fixtures of their daily lives. Patricia Morrison retired fully and dedicated herself to the investigation. Her dining room transformed into a command center with maps, timelines, and color-coded files. Marcus Vaughn never removed Derek's clothes from their closet, couldn't bring himself to pack away the leather jacket Derek had left at home because it'll be too hot in the Mediterranean. Carmen Rivera won a Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism in 2019, but it wasn't for the story she most wanted to tell. I can break stories about corruption in City Hall and corporate malfeasance, but I can't get anyone to care about 4 soldiers who disappeared on a cruise ship. It's like the mystery is too weird, so people just tune it out. Richard Cole died in 2020, his last words to his daughter being, "Find out what happened to your brother. Don't let them make him disappear twice, once from the ship, once from history." The website stayed online, updated regularly with any new information, which became increasingly rare. The annual memorial service in Washington, D.C. drew fewer attendees each year. The Dream 4 were becoming a footnote, an unsolved mystery mentioned in listicles about strange disappearances, grouped with the Mary Celeste and the Bermuda Triangle. The cruise line, Royal Mediterranean Voyages, had rebranded. The MV Celestial Dream had been sold to a different operator and renamed. Life moved on, as it always does, leaving behind only the stubborn few who refuse to accept that some questions have no answers. Patricia Morrison kept all 4 men's satellite phone accounts active, paying the monthly fees for devices that had been locked in safes on a cruise ship 12 years ago. It was irrational, she knew. But it was also hope in its most distilled form, a bet against silence, a refusal to sever the last technical thread connecting her to her son. Maybe someday one of those phones will ping. she told Marcus Vaughn during one of their regular calls in late 2022. She was 73 now, her voice still strong, but carrying the weight of 12 years of disappointment. I know it's foolish. Hope isn't foolish. It's the only thing we have left that they couldn't take from us. He was wrong, though. Neither of them knew it yet. They had one more thing, the truth. And the truth finally announced itself through a signal that should have been impossible, emanating from a place that made no sense, carrying implications that would unravel everything.
The alert triggered at 03:14 hours Eastern Standard Time at the Defense Information Systems Agency facility in Fort Meade, Maryland. Specialist Jennifer Kwan was monitoring routine satellite communications when her screen lit up with an emergency protocol she'd only seen in training simulations. A distress beacon activation from a military-issued personal locator device. The device ID came back immediately, registered to Master Sergeant Kyle Morrison, 1st SFOD-D, reported missing and presumed deceased in 2011. Kwan's first thought was that someone had found Morrison's belongings and accidentally activated the beacon. But as she pulled up the signal metadata, her second thought froze her fingers above the keyboard. The transmission wasn't coming from the Mediterranean Sea. It wasn't coming from Turkey or Greece or anywhere near where Morrison had disappeared. The GPS coordinates pointed to northern Iraq, specifically to a location approximately 60 kilometers west of Mosul, in Nineveh Governorate, a region that had spent years under ISIS control and had only been liberated in 2017. The signal lasted 9 seconds before cutting out. But in those 9 seconds, the satellite had captured not just location data, but a coded emergency message embedded in the beacon's transmission. 4 numbers punched into the device's manual override system. 3919. September 19th, the date the Dream 4 had disappeared. Kwan immediately elevated the alert to her supervisor, Master Sergeant Raymond Cole, who happened to be Benjamin Cole's uncle, a fact that made his hands shake as he read the transmission log. Within 30 minutes, the alert had reached the Pentagon, the FBI's Counterterrorism Division, and a classified unit within the Joint Special Operations Command that handled sensitive personnel recovery. By 0700 hours, Patricia Morrison received a phone call that made her sit down hard on her kitchen floor, the same floor where she'd collapsed 12 years earlier when the cruise line had first called to report Kyle missing. Mrs. Morrison, this is Colonel Sarah Chen from JSOC. We've received an emergency beacon transmission that appears to originate from your son's personal locator device. The signal came from northern Iraq. We're treating this as a priority recovery situation and mobilizing a response team immediately. I need to stress— When did it happen? Patricia interrupted, her voice surprisingly steady. At 03:14 hours this morning. Iraq. You said Iraq. Yes, ma'am. I understand this doesn't align with where your son disappeared. We don't have explanations yet, but the device authentication is legitimate and the emergency code manually entered into the beacon was the date of his disappearance. Someone who knows what happened is sending us a message. Patricia closed her eyes, feeling 12 years of waiting crystallize into a single moment of validation. When do you leave? The team is wheels up in 6 hours. Mrs. Morrison, I can't promise what we'll find. The device could have been recovered and relocated, but we're going to get answers. The recovery operation was designated Task Force Odyssey, a name that acknowledged both the long journey and the mythological resonance of soldiers trying to get home. The team was small and specialized: 8 Delta Force operators, 2 explosive ordnance disposal techs, a signals intelligence analyst, and a forensic specialist. They deployed from Fort Bragg to an airbase in Erbil, Kurdistan, then transferred to helicopters for the final approach. The team leader, Major Alex Reeves, had reviewed the Dream 4 case file during the flight. Like everyone in the special operations community, he'd heard about the disappearance. It was legendary in the dark way that unexplained losses become cautionary tales. 4 of their own vanished without a trace from a place that should have been safe. It had made everyone paranoid about leave time, about letting their guard down. "What's your gut telling you?" his second-in-command, Captain Lisa Martinez, asked as they flew over landscape that looked like the surface of a dead planet, all dust and scars and abandoned structures. "My gut says 4 guys didn't accidentally fall off a cruise ship, then somehow end up in Iraq 12 years later. My gut says we're about to open a door that someone worked very hard to keep closed." The GPS coordinates led them to a compound that had once been an ISIS stronghold, liberated during the Mosul offensive in 2017, and subsequently abandoned. Coalition forces had documented the site during clearing operations, then moved on. It was one of thousands of such locations scattered across the region. Evidence of battles fought and won, then left to the desert. The compound consisted of 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard, all showing significant damage from airstrikes and artillery. Walls were pocked with bullet holes. Debris filled corners where wind had pushed it. Graffiti in Arabic covered surfaces, some of it ISIS slogans from years ago, some of it more recent markings by scavengers or nomadic herders using the ruins for temporary shelter. The beacon signal was coming from the western building, which had partially collapsed but maintained some structural integrity in its lower level. The team approached tactically, weapons ready, expecting anything from booby traps to hostile forces to absolutely nothing. The compound appeared deserted, but appearances meant little in terrain like this. They cleared the courtyard, then entered the western building through a gap in the wall where a doorway used to be. Inside, the air tasted like ancient dust and modern ruin. Sunlight streamed through holes in the ceiling, illuminating floating particles that made the space feel underwater. The floor was littered with debris, broken concrete, twisted rebar, shell casings, scattered pages from burned books. The beacon signal was coming from below. They found the stairs behind a collapsed section of wall, concrete steps descending into darkness. The team's engineer cleared each step for explosives before allowing the others to proceed. 12 steps down, they reached a basement level that had survived better than the upper floors, protected by earth and concrete from the violence above. The basement was a series of connected rooms probably used for storage when the compound had been operational. Now they contained only remnants, overturned furniture, empty ammunition crates, a few pieces of abandoned equipment too damaged or heavy to be worth salvaging. The beacon was in the 4th room, placed deliberately on an overturned metal desk in the center of the space, as if waiting to be found.
Reeves approached slowly, his headlamp illuminating the device. It was definitely a military-issued personal locator beacon, model PLD-375, standard issue for special operations personnel in the early 2010s. The casing was scratched and weathered, the emergency activation button showing signs of recent use, the plastic around it cleaner than the rest of the device, as if someone had wiped away dust before pressing it. "Document everything," Reeves ordered, and the team's forensic specialist began photographing from every angle. The beacon's serial number was visible, partially worn but legible. It matched Morrison's issued device according to military records, but that only confirmed what they already knew. What they needed was context. Why was it here? Who had activated it? Where were the men? Martinez was examining the room when she noticed something: the dust patterns on the floor. Most of the room showed the random accumulation of years, thick, undisturbed layers. But near the back wall, there was a distinct disturbance. Drag marks. Recent, maybe within the past few months. "Major, you need to see this." They approached the back wall, which appeared to be solid concrete, but when Reeves tapped it with his rifle butt, the sound rang hollow. He ran his fingers along the wall's edge and found it. A seam, nearly invisible, camouflaged with dust and deliberate craftsmanship. "We've got a concealment," he announced. "Stand by." The engineer examined the seam and determined the wall section was actually a door, mounted on hidden hinges, held in place by a simple locking mechanism. It took 10 minutes to figure out the release, a rotatable piece of rebar hidden in what looked like structural damage. The door swung inward silently, revealing what lay beyond. A second room, smaller, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, and inside what appeared to be a living space that had been occupied relatively recently.
a camping mattress on the floor, empty water bottles arranged along one wall, MRE wrappers, a camping stove, blankets, and on a makeshift shelf constructed from boards and bricks, 4 passports, 4 military ID cards, and 4 dog tags arranged in a precise line. Reeves picked up the first passport with a gloved hand, opened it to the photo page. Kyle Morrison's face looked back at him, younger but unmistakable. The other 3 were Vaughn, Rivera, and Cole, all 4 Dream 4 members. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered. "They were here." But the forensic specialist was focused on something else. In the corner of the hidden room, partially covered by one of the blankets, was a weatherproof case, the kind used to protect electronic equipment in harsh environments. She opened it carefully, revealing what was inside. A tablet computer, an older model, probably from around 2011, its battery long dead, but the device itself protected from the elements. And next to it, wrapped in plastic sheeting, a small external hard drive. "We need to get this back to base immediately," Reeves said. "Whatever's on those devices might finally tell us what the hell happened." But there was more. As the team continued searching the hidden room, they found something that made the mystery deeper rather than clearer. Written on the concrete wall in what appeared to be charcoal or burned wood, barely visible in the dim light, was a message. The handwriting was shaky, the letters uneven, but the words were clear enough. Taken from ship, September 19, 2011. Held Syria. Moved Iraq, 2014. Wahid al-Kuwaiti, arms dealer. They knew who we were, not random, targeted. If found, tell families we fought. Morrison, Vaughn, Rivera, and Cole. We never stopped trying to get home. Below the message, a date, November 2018. Reeves photographed the wall, his jaw clenched. The implications were staggering. The Dream 4 hadn't accidentally disappeared from the cruise ship. They'd been kidnapped, held for years, moved across international borders, through war zones, surviving somehow until at least 2018, 7 years after they had vanished. But if they'd survived until 2018, where were they now? And who had activated the beacon 3 months ago, in February 2023? The answer came from the forensic specialist who'd been examining the camping mattress more closely. She held up a small evidence bag containing what she'd found caught in the fabric. Several strands of hair, dark brown, long enough for DNA analysis. This space has been used recently. Within the past year, maybe the past few months, someone's been living here or at least visiting regularly. And whoever it was wanted us to find this. They set up the beacon, they left the message, they preserved the evidence. A rescue? Martinez suggested. Someone helped them escape but couldn't get them all the way home? Or someone who knew what happened to them and wanted to tell the story? Reeves countered. Either way, we've got enough evidence to prove the Dream 4 didn't drown. They were kidnapped, held hostage, and survived for years. The team secured everything: the beacon, the passports, the IDs, the tablet, the hard drive, photographs of the wall message, and DNA samples. They also conducted a thorough search of the compound, looking for graves or any indication of what had happened after November 2018. They found nothing conclusive. No bodies, no recent signs of violence, just the hidden room and its carefully preserved evidence, left like a time capsule waiting for the right people to discover it. The extraction took 8 hours, by which time word of the discovery had reached the families. Patricia Morrison sat in her kitchen, surrounded by Marcus Vaughn, Carmen Rivera, and Richard Cole's daughter Amanda, all of them connected by video call, waiting for official confirmation of what the preliminary reports were saying. When Colonel Chen called Patricia back, her voice was careful but couldn't hide the tremor of significance. "Mrs. Morrison, we've recovered evidence that conclusively proves your son and his teammates did not disappear accidentally from that cruise ship. They were kidnapped, held captive for years, and we know they survived for several years. We don't yet know their current status, but we're treating this as an active recovery operation.
Patricia's hand covered her mouth. 12 years. 12 years of being told she was in denial, that she needed to accept her son's death, that the official story was the only story. And now this. Kidnapped, she said, testing the word. By who? For what purpose?
We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. The evidence we recovered includes electronic devices that may contain crucial information. Our forensic teams are working on them now. And Kyle? Derek, Tony, Benjamin, are they... We don't know, Mrs. Morrison. I'm sorry. We don't have that answer yet. But we're going to get it. After the call ended, Patricia looked at the others on the video screen. They all shared the same expression, grief and vindication, and terror and hope, all mixing into something that had no name.
They were alive, Marcus Vaughn said, his voice breaking. For years. Derek was alive and we didn't know. We couldn't help him.
But someone did, Carmen Rivera said, focusing on the only part that made sense. Someone activated that beacon. Someone preserved the evidence. Someone wanted us to know the truth. Then we need to figure out who, Amanda Cole said firmly, her father's military bearing evident in her posture even through the video feed. The tablet and hard drive arrived at the Defense Digital Forensics Laboratory at Fort Meade, Maryland on February 7th, the next day, handled with the reverence of religious artifacts. Because, in a way, that's exactly what they were. Testaments from the disappeared, messages from the lost, evidence that insisted on being heard, even after years of silence. What those devices would reveal would be worse than anyone imagined. Dr. Marcus Wen had been the Defense Digital Forensics Laboratory's lead recovery specialist for 15 years, and he'd seen corrupted drives, water-damaged phones, devices recovered from crash sites and bomb blasts. But when the tablet and external hard drive from the Iraq compound arrived at his workbench, he knew immediately this case would be different. The tablet is a Samsung Galaxy Tab from approximately 2011. The battery is completely degraded, but the internal flash storage appears intact. The external drive is a Western Digital portable hard drive, also from that era, protected by the waterproof case. Both devices show signs of careful preservation. They weren't just abandoned, they were deliberately stored for long-term survival. How long will recovery take? Colonel Chen asked. For the tablet, maybe 48 hours. The hard drive could be faster if there's no encryption, but, Dr. Wen hesitated, if these devices contain what I think they do, documentation of a 7-year captivity by 4 special operations soldiers, we need to approach this methodically. This isn't just evidence. It's testimony from people who thought no one would ever hear their story. He was right. 3 days later, when the data extraction was complete, Dr. Wen sat at his workstation with his door closed and cried for the first time in his professional career. The tablet contained a journal. Not a digital document, but a series of notes written in a simple text application, dated entries spanning from September 2011 to November 2018. 4 men taking turns documenting their experience, their voices distinct even through plain text on a screen. The first entry was from Kyle Morrison, dated September 20, 2011. Day 1. We're alive, all 4 of us. I'm starting this record because if we don't survive, someone needs to know what happened. This wasn't an accident. This was an operation. Last night on the ship, we were approached by a crew member. Turkish. Name tag said Mehmet. He told us there was a problem with our room safes, asked us to come with him to sort it out with security. We should have been suspicious. We had no problems with the safes, but we were on vacation, relaxed, not in combat mode. Stupid. He led us to a service corridor on a lower deck, said security office was being renovated. They were using a temporary space.
The door opened, and there were 6 men with weapons. Not crew, operators, professional. They had sedatives, not bullets. That's how I knew this wasn't random violence. They wanted us alive and quiet. We tried to fight. Derek got one of them in the jaw before they stuck him with a needle. Tony made it 3 steps before going down. I remember Benjamin yelling something, then a sharp sting in my neck, then nothing. Woke up in a cargo container. All 4 of us drugged, zip-tied, in the dark. We could hear engines, feel movement. We're on a ship, but not the cruise ship, something smaller, faster. They knew who we were. That's the part that scares me most. This wasn't a random kidnapping. They specifically targeted 4 Delta Force operators, which means we're either leverage, intelligence assets, or trophies. None of those options end well. Derek is trying to keep morale up. Tony's got a head injury from fighting back. Benjamin is working on the zip ties, but they're industry strength. I'm writing this on a tablet I found hidden in my pocket. They searched us, but missed the small inside pocket. Battery is at 60%. I'm keeping entries short to preserve power. If anyone finds this, tell my mom I never gave up. Tell her we fought. Tell them all we never stopped trying to get home. The entries continued, a chronicle of captivity that was methodical in its documentation and heartbreaking in its humanity. September 22, 2011, Morrison. Moved from the container to a building. Somewhere coastal, we can smell salt water and hear seagulls. Syria, maybe? Our captors speak Turkish and Arabic. They've separated us into pairs, me with Derek, Tony with Benjamin. Different rooms, but same facility. The man in charge calls himself Vahid. He asked us questions about unit deployments, operational capabilities, names of other operators. We gave him nothing except name, rank, serial number. He didn't seem surprised. Said we'd have time to reconsider. September 30th, 2011, Vaughn. Kyle's arm is infected from where they hit him during the capture. They're giving us minimal medical care, enough to keep us alive but not comfortable. We try to exercise in the small space they allow. Routine is the only thing keeping us sane. Morning prayers for those who want them, physical training in chains, memory games to keep our minds sharp. Tony leads songs in Spanish from his childhood. It pisses off the guards, which makes us sing louder.
Elena, if you're reading this, I need you to know I think about you every second. I see your face when I close my eyes. That keeps me fighting. October 15th, 2011, Rivera. They moved us again. Truck transport, overnight. Ended up in a mountain compound. Still Syria. Best guess based on the climate and architecture. Our guard rotation is changed. These guys are more professional, less likely to engage with us. That worries me because it suggests they're settling in for a long-term situation. This isn't about ransom. Vahid visits meekly, asks the same questions, gets the same answers. I think he's testing our consistency, looking for cracks. He won't find any. Carmen, little sister, I know you're looking for me. You never could let anything go unsolved. Don't blame yourself. This isn't on you or the family. This is on evil people doing evil things. Keep being brave. Keep asking questions. Eventually, someone will listen. The entries spanned months, then years. The tablet's battery should have died long ago, but Morrison had figured out how to connect it to a makeshift charging system built from salvaged electronics and a small solar panel one of their guards had left unattended. The journal became their resistance, their testimony, their refusal to be erased. December 2011, Cole. Christmas away from home. Second worst Christmas of my life, first being the one in Kandahar under rocket attack. At least there we had each other and a mission. Here we just have each other. Derek tried to make it special. We saved our bread rations to make something that vaguely resembled cookies. They tasted like cardboard, but we ate them slowly, pretending they were my mom's snickerdoodles. Tony sang Silent Night in Spanish.
It made two of the guards cry, which gave us a weird kind of satisfaction. Dad, I know you're moving heaven and earth to find us. That's who you are. But this thing we're in, it's deep and it's dark, and I don't know if anyone can reach us here. Just know that everything you taught me about honor and duty and never quitting, I'm using all of it. We all are. March 2012. Morrison. Been 6 months. Our captors have given up on interrogating us for intelligence. Now they're just holding us. We figured out we're bargaining chips in something bigger. Vahid's conversations with his associates mentioned the Americans as leverage for some kind of deal involving weapons shipments and territorial agreements. We're not prisoners of war, we are commodities. The worst part isn't the captivity. It's knowing that back home people have stopped looking. We've been written off as drunk tourists who fell off a cruise ship. That narrative serves whoever arranged this perfectly. No one's looking for kidnapping victims if everyone believes we drowned. June 2013. Vaughn. Tony's sick. Something he ate or bad water, can't tell. They're refusing to give him proper antibiotics. He's burning up with fever, and we're doing what we can with water and rags. But we need real medicine. Kyle is negotiating with the guards, offering information about less sensitive operations from years ago, stuff that's probably declassified by now, in exchange for medication. I hate that we're even having to bargain, but Tony's life is worth more than operational security from 2008. They gave us the antibiotics. Whatever Kyle told them, it was enough. Tony is recovering slowly. September 2014. Rivera. They moved us again. This time the journey was brutal. Truck, then across a border at night, then another truck. We're in Iraq now, we're certain of it. The landscape changed, and we overheard guards talking about ISIS advances. That's when we understood why they moved us. Syria was becoming too hot, too chaotic, even for criminals like Vahid. Iraq offered new territory, new opportunities. The facility here is worse, underground partially, former military bunker of some kind. Less space, less light, less everything. But the four of us are still together, still breathing, still refusing to break. 3 years now. 3 years since the cruise ship. I wonder if anyone still remembers us. December 2015. Cole. Derek's tooth got infected. No dentist, obviously. Kyle and I held him down while Tony pulled it with pliers we stole from a guard's toolkit. Derek screamed into a bundled shirt to muffle the sound. The tooth came out, but the pain and blood loss were terrible. We used salt water as antiseptic and prayed it wouldn't get worse. This is what we've been reduced to. Improvised field medicine in a hole in Iraq for injuries that would take 10 minutes to fix in civilization. But we're still here. Still four. We made a pact early on. All of us get out, or none of us do. No one gets left behind, not even in death. July 2016. Morrison. We've been captive for 5 years. I'm 39 years old, and I've spent the last 5 in chains. My mother is probably 70 now. Elena's probably remarried, and I hope she has. Carmen has probably won awards for journalism. The world has kept turning while we've been frozen in this nightmare. Vahid visited today. He's older too, grayer. His operation has evolved. He's not just a kidnapper anymore. He's a full-scale arms dealer working in the chaos of ISIS-controlled territory. We're his insurance policy, he told us. His American guarantee that certain parties won't interfere with his business. He said something else that chilled me. You're more valuable to me alive and forgotten than dead and investigated. He's right. As long as everyone believes we drowned in 2011, no one's looking for us. We're ghosts. March 2017. Vaughn. Mosul offensive is happening. We can hear it. Distant booms, aircraft overhead, the sound of a city being liberated street by street. We're close enough to Mosul that the ground shakes sometimes. The guards are nervous. Vahid moved some of his operations further west, but he's keeping us here. We're still valuable, apparently.
We talk about escape constantly now. With the region in chaos, there might be opportunities. But we're weak from years of captivity. We don't know the exact terrain, and we're still guarded by men with automatic weapons. Every plan we devise ends with at least 2 of us dead. Unacceptable. November 2017, Rivera. ISIS is defeated in this region. Coalition forces cleared most of Nineveh. We heard them come close to our location once. Helicopters, definitely American. We screamed ourselves hoarse, beat on the walls, tried everything to make noise. They never heard us. Or maybe they did, but identified the building as already cleared.
Tony started crying after they left. First time I've seen him break in 6 years. Derek held him while he sobbed. The hope that rescue was close and then watching it disappear was worse than never having hope at all. April 2018, Cole. Derek is sick. Not infection this time. Something deeper. Something wrong with his lungs or maybe his heart. Years of poor nutrition and stress are catching up with all of us, but Derek's body is failing faster. He's losing weight he doesn't have to lose. His breathing is labored. We're trying to keep him active and fed, but our rations are barely enough for healthy men. Vahid's operation is struggling. With ISIS gone, he's lost protection and cover. His shipments are getting intercepted. His clients are being arrested. We should be happy about this, but we know what happens to embarrassing evidence when criminal enterprises collapse. We're loose ends. July 2018, Morrison. Derek is dying. We all know it, though nobody wants to say it out loud. His lungs are filled with fluid, his lips are blue, his fever won't break. We've begged the guards for a doctor, for a hospital, for anything. They refuse. Vahid hasn't visited in months. I think he's abandoned this facility entirely, left a skeleton crew to guard us while he operates from somewhere safer. Derek is trying to stay strong for us, but we can see him slipping away. After 7 years of keeping each other alive, we're about to lose one of us. The pain of that is worse than anything our captors ever did to us. August 2018, Vaughn. Final entry. This is Derek. I'm writing my own goodbye because I don't want Kyle carrying that burden. My body is done. I can feel it shutting down system by system. Lungs can't process enough oxygen. Heart is struggling. Every breath is work. Elena, my love, I'm sorry I never made it home to you. I tried. God knows I tried. But some battles you lose not because you didn't fight hard enough, but because the enemy is time and biology and circumstances beyond your control. To my brothers, Kyle, Benjamin, Tony, you kept me alive 7 years longer than I had any right to survive. That's not failure. That's a gift. You gave me 7 more years of friendship and loyalty and shared humanity in the darkness. I'm grateful. If anyone finds this record, know that we never betrayed our country, never broke our honor, never stopped being soldiers even in chains. We did our duty until the very end. Tell my family I love them. Tell them I was thinking of them when I went. Tell them... The entry ended mid-sentence. The timestamp was August 14th, 2018. The next entry was from Morrison, dated August 15, 2018. Derek died at 03:47 hours. Tony, Benjamin, and I took turns holding his hand through his last hours. He went quietly, which is the only mercy this place ever showed him. We cleaned his body as best we could with the water we had. We said prayers. Then we had to make an impossible decision. The guards took his body. We don't know where. Probably buried in some unmarked hole in the desert. Derek Lawn, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army, Delta Force, decorated veteran of 3 combat tours, loving husband, and the best commanding officer I ever served under, will never have a proper burial. That knowledge is its own kind of death. There are 3 of us now, and we made a new pact. We document everything. Every detail of our captivity, every name we've learned, every piece of Vahid's operation we've witnessed. If we die here, this tablet is our testimony. The truth has to survive even if we don't. September 2018, Rivera. Vahid came back.
First time in 6 months. He saw there were only 3 of us and didn't even ask where Derek was. He knew. I think he'd always known Derek wouldn't make it. He told us his operation is moving again, splitting up. This facility is too exposed after the ISIS defeat. He's consolidating to fewer, more secure locations, which means a decision about us. We're expensive to maintain and dangerous to have. 3 American soldiers who've witnessed 7 years of illegal arms deals are the definition of liability. He didn't say it explicitly, but we understood. We're being liquidated soon. Not abandoned, not released, liquidated. October 2018, Cole. They're moving us separately. That's new and terrifying. For 7 years we've been kept together, our greatest strength being mutual support. Now Vahid's people are splitting us up. Tony was taken 4 days ago, Kyle 3 days ago. I'm alone for the first time since the cruise ship. I'm in a different building now, still part of this compound, but isolated. 1 guard, minimal food, no communication. They're preparing to eliminate us, and they're doing it surgically, separating us so we can't coordinate any resistance. I managed to hide this tablet in the room where we were all kept together, along with the external hard drive that has copies of everything we documented. If I don't survive, maybe the next person who uses this facility will find it. Maybe years from now, maybe decades, but eventually someone will know what happened to the Dream 4. November 2018, Morrison. This is the last entry. I don't have much time. They're coming for me today. I can feel it in how the guards are acting, the way they won't look at me. Tony and Benjamin are already gone. I don't know if they're dead or moved or somewhere in this compound being held separately, but I'll probably never see them again. We survived 7 years together, and now we're dying apart. That's the cruelest part of all. I've prepared everything I can. All our documentation, all our evidence, all our testimony is on this tablet and backed up to the external drive. I've hidden both in the concealed space behind the false wall in our old room. I've left our IDs and dog tags there too. Physical proof we existed, we were here, this happened to us. I'm setting the personal locator beacon to delayed activation. I've modified it using parts I've scavenged over the years. It will remain dormant until triggered by a timer set for approximately 5 years from now. Long enough for whoever inherits this location to potentially find the hidden room. Long enough that maybe the political situation will be stable enough for a recovery team to respond. It's a desperate gamble, but it's all I have left. To our families, you were right. We didn't drown. We were taken, and we fought to survive as long as we could. We never broke, never betrayed our oaths, never stopped trying to get home. If you're reading this, it means the beacon worked and you found our testimony. Let that be enough. Let it be proof that your grief was valid, your intuition was correct, your refusal to accept the lies was justified. Mom, I love you. You knew, you always knew. I'm sorry I can't come home, but at least now you'll know I never stopped trying. This is Master Sergeant Kyle Vaughn, 1st SFODD, signing off. Tell them we did our duty. Tell them we never surrendered. Tell them the entry ended. The timestamp was November 7th, 2018.
There were no more journal entries after that date. But the external hard drive contains something else. Video files. Dr. Wen had flagged them as separate from the journal, requiring special consideration before viewing. When the task force assembled to watch them, even hardened Special Operations veterans found themselves unable to maintain their composure. The videos were recordings of the 4 men, taken at various points during their captivity using a camera one of them had somehow obtained or salvaged. The footage was poor quality, shot in low light, but the faces were unmistakable. The earliest video was from 2012, showing all 4 men sitting against a concrete wall, introducing themselves and stating the circumstances of their capture. They looked tired but defiant, their military bearing still evident despite the chains. Later videos showed the progression of their captivity, Derek leading the others in calisthenics in their confined space, all of them singing the Star-Spangled Banner on July 4, 2015. Tony teaching the others Spanish phrases to pass time. Benjamin leading evening prayers. The final video was dated November 2018. It showed Kyle Morrison alone, gaunt and bearded, his eyes hollow but determined. He spoke directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm probably dead. We all are. But we existed, we resisted, and we recorded everything. There's a man named Wahid al-Kuwaiti who orchestrated our kidnapping and held us for 7 years. There are Turkish operatives involved. There are facilitators in the cruise line industry. This wasn't random. This was organized crime operating in the chaos of Middle East conflicts. We know we're about to be killed. We know we're never going home. But this record survives. Use it. Find Wahid. Find everyone involved in this network. Shut them down. And tell our families. Tell them we never gave up. Tell them we thought about them every single day. Tell them we're sorry we couldn't come home, but we never stopped trying. Semper Fi to my Marine brothers. De Appresso Liber to my Special Forces family. This is how Delta operators die, fighting until the very last moment, leaving evidence that outlasts our lives. Use it well." The video ended with Morrison saluting the camera, then reaching forward to turn it off. The room was silent for a long moment after the playback ended. Colonel Chen was the first to speak, her voice thick with suppressed emotion. "We need to identify who activated that beacon in February 2023. Someone who wasn't Morrison, Vaughn, Rivera, or Cole, but who had access to that hidden room and knew what they'd find. That person is either a witness to what happened after November 2018, or they're involved in the network that held our people captive." The forensic analysis of the hidden room had provided some answers. The DNA samples from the hair found on the camping mattress came back as belonging to a female, Middle Eastern descent, approximately 25 to 35 years old based on cellular markers. She wasn't in any military or intelligence database, but the genetic profile was preserved for comparison. More significant was what they found when they analyzed the beacon itself. The device's activation in February 2023 had been deliberate and sophisticated. Someone had understood the timer mechanism Morrison had installed and had triggered it manually. They'd also carved something new into the beacon's casing below the original 4 sets of initials. A 5th set of initials, L.A., and below that, in tiny scratched letters, Witness, Tell Truth. L.A. is our key, Reeves said during the task force debrief. Female, Middle Eastern, had access to the compound, understood the significance of what she found, and wanted the story told. We need to find her. The intelligence agencies launched a multi-pronged investigation. CIA analysts reviewed surveillance footage from the region around the compound, looking for any evidence of recent visitors. Defense Intelligence Agency contacted local informants in Mosul and surrounding areas, asking about a woman who might have been visiting an abandoned ISIS compound. NCIS began tracing back through the original cruise ship investigation, looking for anyone with the initials LA who might have been involved in the kidnapping network. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Carmen Rivera's investigative journalism network. She'd never stopped building contacts in the Middle East, and when she put out feelers about a woman who might have information about the Dream 4, one of her sources in Erbil responded. "There's a woman named Layla Al-Aziz. She works as a trauma counselor for women and children who survived ISIS captivity. But before that, before ISIS, she was involved with bad people. Her brother was an arms smuggler. Word is she's been trying to atone, and she's mentioned Americans from long ago. No one paid attention because we hear many stories about missing Americans, but maybe this is your Americans." Carmen forwarded the information to the task force immediately. Within 48 hours, they had located Layla Al-Aziz in Erbil, Kurdistan.
She was 32 years old, a psychologist who ran a small NGO helping trauma survivors. And when approached by U.S. military investigators, she didn't run or deny. She simply said, "I've been waiting for you to find me." Layla Al-Aziz sat across from Colonel Sarah Chen and Major Alex Reeves in a secure room at the U.S. consulate in Erbil, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She was small and composed, wearing a simple hijab and carrying the kind of quiet intensity that comes from surviving things that break most people. "I need to tell you first that I was complicit. Not in the kidnapping itself. I was only 20 years old in 2011, and I knew nothing about it then. But later, when I learned what my brother Vahid had done, what he was doing, I said nothing. I was afraid, and I was ashamed, and I told myself it wasn't my responsibility. So the years those men suffered, some of that blood is on my hands too." "Tell us what you know," Colonel Chen said quietly. "Start wherever you need to start." Layla took a breath and began. "My brother, Vahid, you know him as Vahid al-Kuwaiti in your records, but our family name is Al-Aziz, became an arms dealer in the chaos after the 2003 invasion. He was smart, ruthless, and he understood how to exploit the gaps between governments, between military forces, between the law and the lawless. By 2011, he was wealthy and powerful, moving weapons
across borders, working with Turkish intelligence, Syrian militias, Iraqi tribal leaders, anyone who would pay. In September 2011, he told our family he had acquired American insurance. 4 U.S. Special Forces soldiers captured during a business transaction on a Mediterranean cruise ship. I didn't understand then how such a thing was possible. It sounded like fantasy. But Vahid had contacts everywhere, including within the cruise ship company. He had paid crew members to identify high-value targets among the passengers, military personnel, intelligence officers, anyone who might be useful. When the 4 Americans were identified as Delta Force operators on vacation, Vahid saw an opportunity. He arranged their capture with help from corrupt crew members and Turkish operatives. They were sedated, transferred to a cargo vessel during the cruise ship's unscheduled stop, and smuggled into Syria. The cruise ship's security was compromised, cameras disabled, logs altered. It was made to look like the men simply vanished overboard. "Why?" Reeves asked. "What was the purpose of taking them?" Initially, leverage. Vahid was negotiating a major arms deal involving chemical weapons precursors from Syrian stockpiles. He wanted insurance that American intelligence wouldn't interfere. 4 American soldiers as hostages, even secret hostages, gave him bargaining power with certain parties. But then the situation evolved. The men refused to cooperate, refused to provide intelligence, refused to break. They became a point of pride for Vahid, proof of his power. And as the years went on and no one came looking for them, they became confirmation that his cover-up had worked. Layla's voice wavered slightly. "I didn't meet them until 2015. By then, they had been held for 4 years, moved from Syria to Iraq as the war situation changed. Vahid brought me to his facility near Mosul because one of the Americans was sick and he wanted me to provide medical attention. I was studying psychology, but I had basic medical training. He thought I would be loyal to family and keep silent. I saw them, 4 men, chained in an underground room, thin and exhausted and defiant. The sick one was Derek. His lungs were infected. I gave him what antibiotics I had, but it wasn't enough. They needed a hospital, not a psychology student with stolen medicine." She paused, composing herself. "They asked me to help them escape. They begged me. They told me who they were, how they had families searching for them, how they had been kidnapped from a cruise ship. I believed them. I could see in their eyes they were telling the truth. But I was terrified of my brother.
Vahid had killed people for smaller betrayals than helping his prisoners escape. So I did nothing. I gave them medicine and I left, and I hated myself for it. You couldn't have freed them alone, Chen said, though there was no absolution in her voice, just fact. They were guarded, you had no resources, and you would have been killed. I know, but I should have found a way to tell someone. The Americans, the Kurdish authorities, anyone. Instead, I stayed silent, and they stayed captive. Layla continued her account. She had visited the facility several times over the next 3 years, always at Vahid's instruction, always providing minimal medical care or psychological assessment. She had watched the men deteriorate, watched Derek die in 2018, watched the other 3 disappear one by one as Vahid's operation collapsed. After ISIS was defeated and the region stabilized, Vahid's business suffered. He was being hunted by multiple governments. His network was compromised. In November 2018, he decided to eliminate his American prisoners.